Okay, the empty nester old man is back with Sam Collins and Kelly DeShawn, who is the executive director of the Galveston Park Board of Trustees. And this segment, we'd like to focus on the operations. Let you, kind of tell everybody what you do, because it's a lot. You got 300 employees.
Right.
You got 30 million in revenues.
Mm-hmm.
And out of those revenues, if I'm right, you managed to end the last year with, I think, over $600,000 in surplus. Is the port listening? I'm never going to give them a break. So anyway, for now, just tell us what the top line things are that the park board does, and what we might not know, what we should be interested in, what we should know.
Right. So the largest portion of our effort goes to marketing, and what that means is we have a sales team of 4 people. They each have a market. They have to go out there. They've got goals. They have to generate contracts to sell rooms for convention and groups, and so they go out and they generate business. Then we've got a PR department. They go out and they do desk sides. They meet with the newsrooms up there in Houston, see if they can treat us nicely, if we can develop a relationship so that they don't promote the flesh-eating bacteria like
Where
they
does that
do.
come from?
Right.
Yeah.
And so PR works on that. They also make pitches. They work with Texas Tourism, which is our state bureau. They go to New York. They do presentations about Galveston. You might have seen the New York Times 2 years did an article in the Sunday paper about us. Southern Bride just did one. And so to get into those national print magazines, we work really hard on that. And then we've got a marketing team that is phenomenal. We belong to the American Marketing Association and compete in the competitions they have up in Houston for the marketing. We go head to head with marketing agencies that are marketing agencies. We're a little in-house marketing firm. And so we spend our budget putting ads in, doing Facebook, digital ads, billboards. If you see commercials on TV about Galveston, that would be us. And then radio spots as well. We put a lot of money into Houston market, but we're beginning to push that out. We want what we call own Texas. And so we want San Antonio, Dallas, as well to be visiting, Austin to be visiting Galveston as well. That's our primary focus. Under that, then I'd say the next big push is for the beaches. And so on one part of that, we are providing safety. You talk about 300 employees. We have 300 employees in the summer. In the off season, we have 100, which unto itself is a huge monumental feat, because you probably know that workforce here in Galveston is hard to recruit anyway. We're all scrambling for workforce. I always tell people, if we're going to grow our industry, our biggest hindrance right now is workforce, qualified workforce. So right before the summer season starts, we go from a beach patrol department of 9 people to 140. So we're recruiting, we're onboarding, we're uniforming, and we're equipping those 140 lifeguards. Those are the kids. I always say that Chief Davis is bald because he's working with a bunch of kids.
Keeps him young looking.
If you have to work with kids these days, the work ethic is really different than it was when we were all grown up. Part of the caring for the beaches also is the beach cleaning crew.
Real quick on the Peter Davis thing, I've read recently, our lifeguards are, they're known.
So Chief Davis himself is the president of the United States Lifeguarding Association. As such, he represents the country and the International Lifeguarding Association. Peter's setting the standard for the Texas coast. He goes out and he trains the people in South Padre and Corpus who aren't as sophisticated as we. Part of that's been driven by the fact that we have one of the singular most dangerous coastlines in the United States because of the groins that are out there, and then mixed with the number of people because of our proximity to Houston, it creates a dangerous situation.
When you say groins, you mean the jetties?
The jetties, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. They make rip currents around them. And so, Beach Patrol is stellar, and as a community, we're really fortunate that we carved out some of those resources to put towards Beach Patrol. And when you talk to some of the old timers, they tell me that was one of the impetuses. We were getting visitors down here, people were drowning, and nothing like a bad rap.
For drowning.
Right, and so that was one of the reasons. After that, the maintenance of the parks. We're responsible for several city-owned parks, East Beach, Stewart Beach, the Seawall, Delanera, and then Seawolf Park, which is not a beach park out there.
Now, real quick, you distinguish these. These are city-owned beaches. So basically our coastline is made up of Texas Beach and city-owned beach.
So I think the difference is that the coastline itself is the state of Texas. It's in our Constitution that it's open beach. It's not owned by the state necessarily in all cases, but there's an easement on it, meaning a right of use by everyone. And if you own a piece of property on the West End and the state has decided that people can use your property, it's incumbent upon us then to clean it up. And that's why we get involved in cleaning up. But the access points themselves, East Beach is an access point off the coast. Stewart Beach has the coast, but it's also an access point. Those are all squarely within the public domain and property of the city of Galveston. So we manage those, and then the last thing we do is the beach nourishment, and we've really been hitting it out of the park with that one. Just to share
biggest boon to our economy, I think, in a long time, because it just pushes up land values.
And look at this, we're gonna, in April 2019, we're coming back to do Babes again. The last time we laid that down, there was 600,000 cubic yards of sand and a big hole that we had to fill. This time we're coming in with 1 million cubic yards of sand, and we've already filled the big hole. That cost the city of Galveston $2 million. The project is a $23 million, and the other $21 million is OPM.
Yeah.
It's coming from state and federal resources. We've gotten really good at making the case that these beaches might be Galveston's beaches, but we're stewarding them for the state, and we need some help. Yeah. So we hope to get to Jimmy's. Jimmy's on the pier. And actually, I'm going for the end of the seawall.
Well, in the first segment, we talked about tourist season a little bit, but if you can remind, because some people don't watch all the segments, when does tourist season run, and how many people come onto the island, which you talked about in the first one, and how it impacts Galveston. And for this segment, do not use the words economic impact, because I don't want my co-host.
How do I justify my being?
Yeah. There's actually a button right there.
Revenues.
But if you push that economic impact button, Norm's head would explode. And mess up my shirt and mess up my bow tie. So
and you're looking too handsome.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
So we, last count, we estimate 7 million people are coming to the island. And boy, that is a large group of people for such a small community.
And that net is going outside of Houston, you said, isn't it? Yeah, when we talk about looking at the numbers.
Let me talk about our business composition. Tourism is both group and convention, right? You're selling to corporations to come down here and host their thing, or it's leisure. We say that our leisure tourists is about 80% of our business, and our group and convention is only about 20% of our business, but you need it because in the summer they're selling rates really high because there's a lot of demand, a lot of families on vacation. Galveston has a great reputation. We're really lucky. But then once you come out of that family-friendly season of May to maybe the beginning of September or August, then it gets kind of skinny for tourism, and we're trying to fortify it with events and different markets. Tourism revenues last year generated $2 million for every 1 cent of tax, and there's 15 cents of tax. So $30 million was generated just through tourism, and that was divided then between the park board, a little bit for the city, for local NGOs, the state, and then the convention center as well.
Now, did you said 60% in that first one. You didn't get 60% of that number, because you said it was like 12 million.
My budget is 60%. Yeah, so out of that $30 million, we took $12 million for the purposes that we use them for. Hotel occupancy tax in our institution pays for marketing and promotion, pays for the lifeguards, and it pays to clean the beaches after visitors come through.
So I'm just getting clear.
Please.
That's 40% of 30. You said 60. Where was the 60% number?
They're different things. Okay. So 80% of our business comes from leisure people who are on vacation. 20% comes from convention. Out of all of that business, we get 60% of the revenues.
Okay.
And those 60%, I'm sorry, we do not get 60% of those revenues.
Yeah, that's right. There we go. I said 60% of 30 is 18.
A third, we get about a third of those revenues.
Okay,
and that third makes up 60% of my budget.
There we go.
Thank you for that clarification.
60 of 30 was 18.
I should know that I can't BS a financial guy there. No matter how many segments it goes over.
Yeah. The numbers are the numbers.
Yeah. So where you talk about where we are in Texas, and I remember seeing once that you said that we had a healthy draw from Houston, and an hour outside of Houston. But then you also spoke that you wanted to start going further afield. And now a few years have gone by. How did that effort pan out? And how did you adjust it? Because I'm sure you're always adjusting this
Yes.
stuff. Based on results.
Right.
So what? We know with the Houston market, water's blue, sky's blue. Let's hit Galveston. What happens to the people, in Des Moines or Chicago? How much of our visitors, get a
So let me first talk to you about how I know what I know.
Okay.
We've gotten really sophisticated, and unfortunately the board has supported us buying into some research information, because if you're making these big decisions, you need to have some data behind it to do it. So one of the things that we've involved over the last 3 years is buying into a location-based data service. And so what they do is that for everybody in the United States, they buy the data from T-Mobile or Verizon. And if you, God bless you, have downloaded an app, that the weather app, Zillow, something that requires your location, you're feeding into our system. So they take all of that data, they take out everybody who's got a Galveston residence as their bill, they take anybody out from 50 miles that's close, because we consider you're just a day tripper then maybe, and then they take out anybody who's commuting on and off the island. So we're left with this universe of data that says where people are coming from. We can tie that back to where their origin was. Where's their home account? How long do they come on the island? Once they're on the island, where are they going, right? And we can tell how much they spend. So some of the data that we've identified from that is, first off, 80% of Houston.
That's scary stuff. I got to say, it really is.
I can show you how to take it off your phone afterwards.
Okay.
Not for your listeners. We're counting you.
But anytime you turn the location back on,
Yeah, then we're
you're
collecting.
back on, yeah.
We discovered that 80% of Houstonians stay for a day or less. However, if you're coming from Dallas, we're capturing you for 3 days. If you're coming from Kansas City, Nebraska, Arkansas, which are still drive-in markets for us, you're staying probably for a week. So the mass is coming from Houston, and we can't let that go, because the volume is just so important. But we are trying to reach farther because we want people to stay longer. We're continue to work on this rhetoric that I knew you heard before, that if we want an engaged visitor, they need to stay longer and spend more. It's better to have less people spending more money than more people spending less. So let's talk about Houston for a moment. That brings me back to the day fees that we get through the parks and Seawall. Seawall is $1 an hour. This year it generated about $900,000 in revenues, which is great. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Since we started the Seawall program, the city and the park board, we've banked $1.1 million in the reserve to maintain those assets down there. But are we really worth $1 an hour, Norman?
I think we're worth a lot more.
Right, and if your biggest market is Houston and they're only an hour away, and all it costs them is an hour to get in the car and come down, we want them to spend more than the $5 that they came down with.
And we want them to be the kind of people that don't want to come to where can we go where it's the cheapest bang for
Right.
$5.
So, and we've seen
No
that.
offense to anybody, but
We've
want
seen it in
people
the
with disposable
demographic.
income.
People have said to me all the time, ever since the city instituted Seawall parking, we don't find diapers down on the beach anymore.
Right.
It's folks that are coming to spend a little bit of money, and they expect the environment to be clean and the beaches to be clean. And
Make Ultra bottles instead of Budweiser.
So, part of part of the strategy we've been talking to City Council about is all of our beach access. We've got 41 beach access points, and we charge for 5 of them. So that means 36 of our beach access points are free. And if you think about where free is, it's all on the west end.
Right.
So I shared with you during the break that one of the things that our data also shows us is that 60% of the people, when they come on the island down 61st, they take a right and they go out to the west end. And we know that because the short-term rentals out there have gone ballistic. When I started 7 years ago, short-term rentals represented 8% of our revenues. Today, they represent 26% of our revenues. And that's great. That's the kind of tourism business you want. Made up of small businessmen, made up of middle-sized businessmen, not necessarily just big flags, right? Because that's what's driving the renovation of our housing stock, thank God. And God bless these people that'll come down and renovate one of those historic homes.
Yeah.
A labor of love.
Yeah.
and not a cheap one.
Money
And if they
pit.
can turn some money on a second home while they're doing that, God bless, it's good for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But I keep saying we got to make a better mousetrap. So if we know all these people are going down to the West End, we need to charge for the beach access down there and not give it away. We need to have better restaurants or more restaurants down there. We need to have some places that we can pull money out
Right.
of people.
And one of the things that you also need, I'm wondering, for the viewers, one of the things that they don't like about going to the West End is bathrooms. But I know it's a challenge year in, year out, year in, year out. What can they expect, in the summer of 2019, if they take a right to go out to the West End to one of the smaller pocket parks?
So the city took on the management of the pocket parks, and they've, I think, approached it from a different perspective, and I'm interested to see if this is going to work for them. They put concessionaires in there in high dollar positions, and then they're not charging the beach fees. And that could be an interesting model. Could you get the concessionaire to guarantee your payment to you come hell or high water?
Right.
And then he or she's got to make it work. I'm interested to see. I'm not completely convinced that that's going to work, because it's hard to get a third party to invest in the real estate if they don't own it, right? And they've got short-term contracts, and so is the money they produce going to be enough to maintain
Right.
the
So
facilities?
the
So
concessionaire
right
is going to
now-
be responsible for the bathrooms.
Yes.
That's going to be interesting.
So right now, once you get past Delanera, there's no charging for any access on the West End. We are not charging on the East End, East Beach, Stewart Beach, the seawall. We got it covered, and I think that's great. On the West End, we're not charging for any of that. The other thing the data shows us is that once people go out to the West End, and think about San Luis Pass, way the heck out of there, they're not coming into town.
No.
Whereas if they stay in town and they stay at the San Luis or they stay at Moody Gardens, you can see they went to the beach, they went to downtown, they went to the historic Strand, they went over here. You can see them moving around. Once they go out to the West End,
You're lost.
There
They
she
went out in the deep
be.
end. They went in the deep end.
and it's not going to be something we're going to be able to correct from one time to the other. It needs a strategy. We need to encourage development out of there. We need to qualify what the opportunities are. We need to help businesses identify that
Right.
and begin to build around that. And I think that's one of the responsibilities we have. This is not something the Park Board's done previously, but something I'm interested in is bringing new businesses to town. I've got great family product. What do you do with your 19-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah. That leads into another question about the island and marketing and the saturation levels. So you're working with an island and you're limited. At what point is spending one more dollar, does it have a negative impact? We talked about this a little bit with we want to have those individuals spend, or you want to have individuals spend more with less people. Where are we in with regards to those numbers? And if we're not fully saturated yet, when do you think we will be?
Gosh, I would begin to say to you that in the summer we're there. We're at a saturation point. And
Really?
well, the reason
Just
I
3
say
months,
that.
or when do you start?
Well, especially peak weekends. In particular weekends. And think about the reason that I say that to you is because you've come down to Galveston, you've had a wonderful time, you stay on the beach on the West End, and then you want to leave Sunday. How long does it take you to get off the island? And how does that set your tone for the next time you want to come back if it took you 3 hours? And that's not an exaggeration. I'm sure
Right.
you've talked to people that are coming from the West End and they're just trying to turn on to 61st Street, or they're tearing into those neighborhoods back on Stewart Road.
53rd, yeah.
Right. And I would say to you, we're past capacity. If we can't
In the summer
manage
months.
those kind of crowds in the summer month, we are. And that's why I'm advocating for the beach parks and the seawall to increase their fee, because it's a supply and demand, right? You got a lot of demand now. Let's increase the price a little bit and see if we can't even that out. I could stop marketing to Houston tomorrow and they're still going to come because we're the closest destination and the closest beach to them, right? My concern about what's going to happen right now is the port. I agree. We do need to expand that port operation and the cruise ship. That's great. I'm concerned about the additional 12,000 cars that are coming onto the island on a weekend to do that on top of what we're already doing. And how does that impact the quality? So in my mind, it all comes back, Sam, to being able to generate the business, but continuing to move it up the ladder about who are we selling to and how are they staying and what are they doing here. And if we're bringing people down the road just to park their car and get on a cruise ship or to go to a free access point and leave, then it's incumbent upon us to make a better mousetrap
Yeah.
so we can get more resources.
And by the way,
out of
I
them.
want you to notice she mentioned the port, and I didn't start pounding my fist on it. But you bring a good point. But I think something that I'd like to ask is, because I absolutely agree with you that we have a great product and we should charge more for it. The $1 an hour fee was ridiculous. And it was the result of everybody wanting to please everybody,
Right.
Which never works. So you're going to be able to get more revenues there. Can the park board actually, you said you've had the world's greatest marketing department. Can your marketing department say, okay, now we have to, kind of shift gears and go to the higher strata? Are there different marketing strategies that you can use?
Sure. So we are not categorizing people by their income, by their household income. We are categorizing people in marketing by their interest. So we're going to talk about Facebook a little bit more. That's why I looked at that. So we can go and we can say, we know this group of people came on the island, and while they were here, they went to the yacht basin, they went to the 61st Street Pier, they went out to Seawolf. We know they're fishing. We know based on the kind of posts that they have on their we're not listening to any conversations, but on the posts that they have on their Facebook, what are their interests and hobbies? Then we can pull that out and say, where are they from? What's their family composition look like? And build a look-alike market.
Right.
That even though they haven't come to Galveston, they share the same interests and hobbies, and they look at the same magazines and listen to the same radio programs as this group over here. So if we know they're look-alike, then we can turn around and market them. So more so than the household income, we're looking at how far away are you, what geographic market are you in, and what are
Right.
your interests.
And real quick before we get out, we haven't talked about the historical aspects yet, and we have, you can walk Galveston streets on the East End for a day and just your eyes are huge. Do you have numbers on exactly how much the history aspect of our island brings? I mean, what the,
We're
how
right
much
up,
of an attraction
up
is?
against the clock. I'd like you to not be interrupted with that. Can we do that when we come back? It's like 21, 22 minutes. You got to have it on the second segment?
Yeah, well, I think I'm old, so therefore I should get what I want.
We haven't qualified exactly what that market is. We're taking it in a different direction. We think that we got a lot of legs under that. And so I've talked about us being a family-friendly destination, a beach destination, and that's kind of how we've branded ourselves. This year, we are going out, we're doing a year of market research. We have groups coming in every quarter to talk to visitors about why do you come, what drives your interest here, what's the best asset we have, what's our biggest challenge, gather that information, and then we're going to hire a creative firm, the first time we've taken it outside of the agency, to do some creative. The creative that we want to cultivate is not the beach family-friendly image. We want the historic port image that you think about Savannah or Charleston that lifts that history and culture.
Right.
We think that that's a more sophisticated brand for us.
Right.
We think it's a more appropriate brand
because you
for
think about
us.
Savannah, first thing you think of is those big old grand houses.
Well, heritage tourism
Yeah.
is much more. They spend much more. Heritage tourists spend much more.
We agree.
Yeah.
We agree.
I believe the economic impact of those heritage tourists.
Is this going to be an overriding theme?
Poke Norman.
Since he got that last question in,
I want you to know I now have health care so I can afford blood pressure medication.
Let me just say one more thing about the historic port. It really doesn't have anything to do with the cruise business. It talks about what a community that has historically been a port community means. And that is why we've got Oktoberfest and the Greeks, or we've got a bunch of Italians down here, or you have a healthy Jewish community. It's because that port influenced us as a community, influenced the character of us as a community, and that's what we want
and
to
the
embrace.
citizens paid for every dollar of it. Trust me, I've got the numbers.
Take us out.
But we are ending our second segment. Come back for our third segment because we're going to talk about the future of Galveston tourism, and you don't want to miss that.